Joining me now is Michael Phillips, a producer at 1010XL in Jacksonville, Florida. We're going to talk about the Chris Doyle news. Chris Doyle, former strength and conditioning coach at the University of Iowa, was fired last season for accusations of racism and for bullying players. Chris Doyle was then hired by the Jacksonville Jaguars under Urban Meyer's staff for the same position. There's since been some outcry, and he has since resigned from his position. Michael, you are on the ground in Jacksonville. What was the timeline of this hiring, and how did we get to this point?
So it was first reported about 5 or 6 days before they announced the entire staff. Urban Meyer, in his press conference introducing the entire coaching staff, mentioned that he's known him for 20 years. He was at Utah the year after Urban left, I believe. I don't know that they ever worked together, I don't believe, but they were at Utah relatively close to each other, but he has known him for a long time. That's what he said. And he mentioned that he vetted him, the GM Trent Baalke vetted him. Shad Khan was even involved in it, and they were confident in what they uncovered and found out about him, and felt good enough to bring him onto the staff. And obviously, after doing so, they got they got a lot of backlash. That maybe they either they didn't realize how impactful this hire was going to be. Maybe they misjudged it. I can't believe that they didn't, anticipate some sort of, backlash in response to
Right.
it. But maybe they just didn't think it would be as bad as it got initially. And then, technically Saturday morning, it was around midnight, Friday night. They got the news drop that Chris Doyle had resigned. He didn't, in saying that he didn't want to be a distraction to the team, and felt like it was best to move on and leave the Jaguars.
So what does it say about the vetting process? Because you mentioned that the GM, owner Khan, and Coach Meyer all vetted the process, the hire. What does that say about the vetting process for the Jacksonville Jaguars for their staff?
It says one of two things: either they lied and they knew exactly what they were getting, or they were lied to by him, people that they spoke to in Iowa, whoever it may have been that they talked to in their vetting process. But there was misinformation or just a lack of self-awareness of what was, the anticipatory response into hiring this guy. As soon as the news broke, it was national headlines almost everywhere. And just about every single place was ripping him, ripping Urban Meyer, ripping the hire, saying that it was just irresponsible, awful, and how could you do it in today's climate, kind of thing. So, yeah, what it says about the Jaguars vetting process is that maybe they need to reevaluate some things.
When Urban Meyer was hired, he talked about how he wanted to establish his own culture. That was kind of how he, quote unquote, won the press conference in Jacksonville. Where do you see that culture being formed going from here? Because he clearly wanted to bring a guy on that, while maybe his results in the weight room speak for themselves in a positive way, his off the field and in practice actions speak a different way. What does that say for the Jaguars culture going forward in Urban Meyer's first year?
Well, that was always like the biggest pushback, at least from my perspective, of bringing him in the first place. Like you just mentioned, he was considered one of, if not the absolute best strength and conditioning coach in the entire country. And he was incredible at his job, A+, all around the board, in terms of getting results. And if we know anything about Urban Meyer, you and I both know that Urban Meyer is a results driven 1, 2, 3 guy. Anything outside of what you get in terms of winning and results, we'll deal with later. You can handle it, whatever it may be. But yeah, it was just weird because the culture now, and I'm not a huge fan of like the culture per se, but the coming in as a first-time NFL coach to all these now professional guys. And I love the way that he built a staff with a bunch of NFL guys, because he's going to need that to rely on in terms of winning over these guys and convincing them to follow in his lead, which is a big thing in the NFL. You got to convince these millionaires to buy in, and being a guy that's coaching in the NFL for the first time, that's huge. And this hire, now gone obviously, but when he hired, it was just a lack of self-awareness, I thought, because even if he does get you the results that you want necessarily in the weight room, I don't know if that's worth not having complete trust from your players. And that's such a big thing, especially in the NFL. because they're grown men. They come to work and then they go home. It's not like college to where he controls absolutely everything. There's a lot more regimented things, so you have to have a lot of trust between the players and the coaching staff. And I think even really considering bringing him in was, if it was, even if it was just a slight 1% notch in the wrong direction of, just barring that trust between the players and the coaches, I probably wouldn't have done it, just because the what you lose in trust, I don't necessarily think you make up for in what Chris Doyle brought to the table.
Win at all costs, it seems to have been the Urban Meyer philosophy for years in the past, and definitely seems like what he's bringing to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Michael Phillips from producer 1010XL in Jacksonville, Florida. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, man.